Oh,
Do both.
look at that thing.
Oh, that's funny. That's a Zoom. Yeah. Zoom recorder recording the Zoom meeting.
This is getting
It's like metal.
refractive.
I can't tell. Oh yeah, it says I'm recording. So if it's all right with you all, I'll be recording. Hopefully the audio will come up too.
Great. And before we start, what is the time? How much time do we have for this meeting?
Good question. It's now
45 now.
Luckily, we're starting on time.
Yeah, do you need a hard stop, anybody?
Does anybody need a hard stop, or should we generally say an hour and a half, 2 hours?
2 is max.
2 max?
Why don't we say we're going till
3.
Okay, can you be kind of a time, keeping track of time, just keep us aware of? So just to keep in mind, we need to exercise some levels of brevity during this conversation so that we can be efficient and make sure everyone's heard and move towards what our next steps are and our roles and responsibilities, which are the outcomes we're wanting from this meeting.
Beautiful. Okay, I agree.
Check-ins. Who'd like to start?
Oh, Tunisia. One more person to introduce themselves. Hey.
Everybody. Hey.
Hi.
How is everybody today?
Yay, we just got started.
Cool. Hey.
If you want, you can claim this into the table.
Sure, I can come back up a little bit.
Yeah.
I brought grapefruit.
Yeah. I got a bag of goodies for you.
I love it.
So let's, we're going to continue, and you're going to be one of the first to introduce themselves.
Oh, okay. That sounds good. Hey everybody, I didn't even
So you want to, who wants to go first? John, would you go first? John,
I will go first, and then we'll go clockwise from
So
here.
check in just so that everybody knows about you, kind of who you are, what you're hoping, why you were drawn here, and maybe what you're hoping to get out of the meeting.
Okay, so Johnny Allen, because there's too many Johns in the room, and that's what my sisters used to call me. I feel close to anyone who calls me Johnny. And so I am one of the founders of the Birdhouse, which is where we are now. But I'd like to say that I'm speaking on behalf of myself because we're hosting this gathering at the Birdhouse. It kind of tends to be confusing who's speaking as who. It's just, I like to do that because Jessica is also a founding member of the Birdhouse, and we have not discussed our participation as an organization yet. So it's just, my hope is that we can take this collective energy, focus, know-how, experience to consolidate it into some form in Los Angeles that will speak to the need for ecosystem restoration and human care, especially during this time where we'll be seeing and have already seen so much people left to their own devices without support, those falling off and not tended to by the economic system that we have. So in light of trying to be brief, I'll say thank you for coming. I'm really excited about this group, and I will, in the end, keep this group on a thread so we can communicate in the future. Robin?
My name is Robin. I've been involved with ecosystem restoration camps and other kind of conservation stewardship stuff around the world.
Last name too, so we can Google you.
My name is Robin Woolner, like a sheep's wool. Yeah, I think I felt called towards this because, I'm from LA and I've always had a real love-hate relationship with Los Angeles. Most of the work I've done, almost all of the work I've done around conservation has been outside of Los Angeles, aside from spiritual work I've done here. And I've always wanted to kind of come back and do something here, but every time I've tried, it's always felt like closed doors. And so I feel inspired to be here because, yeah, it connects to my homeland. And what I'm hoping to get out of this is kind of a clear sense of where we're going and who's doing what.
Right on. Thank you. Ms. Jessica.
Hola. My name is Jessica Cruz, and as John mentioned, I work with the Birdhouse. I'm an independent consultant, but I have a history in working with community services and parks and recreation in communities of Maine. So I'm really interested in seeing where this conversation goes and how parks may somehow fall into that conversation, if that's possible, because a lot of my background and the people that I know and the connections that I have are mostly city folk. So I'm looking to see how those resources may be able to be leveraged here, depending on the project. But just figuring out what I've learned in my experience, my professional experience, and figuring out how to create a new system that can help those that really need it, since I've been working closely with those communities who need. So glad to be here.
Yay.
Maybe it's this one. All right, my name is Erin Mcmorrow. Nice to meet all of you. I just got invited. Louder?
Speak up, I think.
Okay.
I don't know if they can hear you.
Can you guys hear me?
Just.
All right. All right. So let's see. I've lived in LA for the last 15 years or so. Studied at USC in urban planning. I was one of the original founding members of Kiss the Ground, whose movie just came out. So I was there in the first year while we were getting together, while we were a bunch of volunteers, and then from there, I went off on an international book journey. So I wrote a book called Grounded: A Fierce Feminine Guide to Connecting with the Soil and Healing from the Ground Up. And so that book is coming out soon. So that's sort of what's brought me back from being kind of a hermit in a writerly life to getting back into the community and back into really all the way full circle, back to like the urban planning conversation and cities and resources and how does it all come together on the ground. So I've kind of been, I got really fortunately connected and I just got catapulted into this in the last week. So I'm really excited to be here.
What is your connection to this group?
This group, well, through Kiss the Ground,
Yes.
Darius is one of the film editors,
Yes.
and then he knows John.
Okay.
And John happened to be here because COVID sort of kept him here. It was very fortunate for me, and he was in Topanga, and so then we got connected up and started talking and realized how much we had in common, and then he invited me to a few things that he's been working on. So I didn't even know this existed, but I'm so excited that it does.
Yay.
Yeah.
What's the title of your book again?
Grounded: A Fierce Feminine Guide to Connecting with the Soil and Healing from the Ground Up.
Still not published. It's
Still not
coming out.
published March. It's coming in March. Yeah.
Well, you have publisher's copy already because I've seen it.
I have a gallery. Yeah.
Without the cover art, right?
Yeah. Well, it's a soft cover, so yeah.
Well, hello, everybody. I'm Dennis Washburn, and probably the largest claim to fame is I'm one of the founders of the city of Calabasas. I was the founding mayor of the city after a 20-year incorporation drive to get out of the clutches of Los Angeles County, and served on the city council there for 20 years. But before that, and the reason for, I guess, forming the city of Calabasas in the first place is that I was elected / appointed to the board of the Resource Conservation District of the Santa Monica Mountains before it was that title. So I've had about 34 years worth of experience in integrated resources management, meaning water, soil, energy, atmosphere, and all the elements therein. And I have recently, through my son-in-law, gotten connected with some folks that you may have already heard about at Regenerate, and also 7 Vortex. Regenerate is actually a brainchild of Archie Casnet, and Archie and his colleague Hugo Arroyo has introduced me to John, and John introduced me to Johnny, and I've also met Aaron along the way, and we've in the past week and a half had a whirlwind of various meetings or convocations, I would call them. And the reason I'm here at the Birdhouse is because Johnny was on the call that we spoke, I guess a week ago, Monday now? Actually, last
Sunday.
Monday. Sunday. So here we are a week later, plotting the genesis of an entire movement, certainly in California, and from California to China, to Morocco, and to Spain, and to South Africa, and Panama, and Costa Rica. It just goes on and on. I haven't even started to tell you about all the connections I'd like to see us make. And not with any one of our organizations, but by an alliance of the organizations that each of us has been in, or that each of us wants to see grow out of the movement that seems to be actually taking shape here. Anyway, I look forward to that. And if anybody needs to know about the Association of Governments of any of the counties or the regions of California, I was a 16-year member of the Regional Council of Southern California Association of Governments. I also founded the Las Virgenes Malibu Council of Governments, 5 cities from Hidden Hills and Calabasas to Agoura Hills, Westlake Village, and Malibu, and the 3rd District of LA County.
I think you and Jessica are
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of connection. And Ventura County, because we obviously convinced the people of both counties not to build the Amundsen Ranch, and instead acquired 5,500 acres with our money in California to preserve that land. And that's a strategy that I think we should talk about as well.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's me.
Woo.
Hi, everybody. I'm John. I think you probably know, most of you know who I am. I've been working in studying ecology for about 30 years. And I've made a number of films, and I got tired of the theoretical parts, and I just got really interested in physical changes. And I wondered how much physical change could we make? And so now the camps movement has gone from no camps to 37 camps in 6 continents. And we start to see that there's this great energy below the surface, which is not connected to the control mechanisms necessarily that have been in place. And so this is a new energy. This new energy can help to move us to a new era, I think. That's what I'm working for.
Awesome. Miss Tunisia.
Hi, everybody. I'm Tanisha Boudreau. What is there to know? I am a union laborer, but I've been into gardening for the last 10 years. I met Johnny because I was relining the sewer pipes in front of his neighborhood as a laborer. And we both shared a love of gathering and wildcrafting and gardening stuff. So
Traded seeds.
And so it's just trying to follow in line with who I am and what I do. I built a garden in my front yard in South Central and have actually created network out there since the last time I've been here. So I'm just interested in learning and continuing to build the network and to bring more people of color into the fold.
She's an underspoken leader.
I think we need to turn up our speaker now.
Okay, yeah, could we do this?
Ask our remote people to join.
We're gonna, you're gonna call on someone.
What can the online group kind of self-organize to check in for themselves?
Just go top left on it.
We got one up there.
Maybe Veronica could start.
Hi everybody, I'm so glad to be here. So I met John also through the Kiss the Ground folks just a few weeks ago, maybe 2 weeks ago. I worked and still work as an advisor to various either tech or sort of forward-thinking companies that are either specializing in like sustainability or human connection, therapy, wellness. And I kind of packed up my whole life recently and moved into a van because I wanted to learn more about regenerative farming and restoring the land, and I just didn't trust myself to sit behind a laptop and learn about it. So I thought, let me go to these places. And in meeting John immediately, and being aware of this network I have of just really inspiring movers and leaders, in the entrepreneurial space, I really just want to be here to see how I can help support this, because I don't know how not to at this point. So I don't have a lot of the knowledge you guys have, oh my gosh, when it comes to like the land and stuff, but I'm just, I'm so here and present to learn and support whatever I can and connect the dots. That's usually what I do, is I build out teams of people and make things that aren't real in startup land. So hopefully I can support that way here too.
Veronica, how do we spell your last name again?
Owens, O-U-E-N-S.
Thank you.
Yeah. Nice to meet y'all.
Oh, no.
Thanks.
My name is Jennifer Kelly, and this is my husband, Raul Lecky. We got connected to Kiss the Ground and John through Veronica. I own a yoga studio and wellness center in the Valley, and my background is in yoga, meditation, hypnotherapy, nutritional therapy. I've been a foster parent for 14 years and specialized in addictions and PTSD. I've always through the years done a lot of work with homeless, and I'm really drawn to reconnecting people back to the earth in a healthy way for grounding and reconnecting and basically healing from the inside out. And so yeah, I'm very interested in connecting with other like-minded people. There's a lot I could say, but I'm gonna just leave it there and see what Raul wants to say.
Yeah, my background, worked for nonprofits a lot in my 20s, and most recently, and then I worked in film and TV for years, mostly documentaries. And the last few years, I've been doing real estate, and I studied nutrition. So I'm really, my interest is in nutrition and health, and that included in that is organic farming and just sustainable agriculture.
Mm-hmm. And, one of my focuses in my wellness center is lifestyle shift and change, that we heal when we change our lifestyle. We don't heal just because we come to yoga or just because we change our diet or it's not one thing. We need to heal our lifestyle into a lifestyle that's more sustainable for the earth and for ourselves and living more in community. And that's when we truly, truly heal. So, yeah.
Beautiful. Delaney somewhere.
Hi, group. Sorry I can't be there with you today. I spent a lot of my time in Beechwood Canyon, about 20 years, so I can feel like I'm there with you. My background is as a filmmaker, and I was in Hollywood with like real movies for about 20 years. And then I've been producing documentaries about sustainable agriculture for the last 20. I live in Ventura County in Ojai. So I did a series of films with a roundtable. I served on a roundtable for 8 years called the Ag Futures Alliance. And the whole zeitgeist of that was having all kinds of different stakeholders, about 24 of us with a 3-year commitment minimum. And I was with them for 8 years and made a series of 3 films, because it's all about, their whole goal was how to make sure that agriculture remains viable in Ventura County and in perpetuity. For those of you who don't know, the Oxnard Plain has 30 to 60 feet deep of topsoil. Whoa. So I consider it one of the world's natural assets is essential in the same way that the polar ice caps or the rainforests are. When you have 30 to 60 feet of topsoil, you need to protect that. And we have been. So I made films about working with farm workers, the need to create safe and decent housing for farm workers. One of my films was just a 15-minute short, and it worked for 10 years as a community organizing element. Book clubs, PTAs, churches, you name it, showed the film in order to get community buy-in, and did. And then 10 years after that film, my partner and I made another film to show what had been done in the various cities, because we built about 500 units in 6 cities. So I did environmental stewardship of ag, called Good Stewards. I did one about how to preserve farmland, protect farmland, and how do you do that and still do urban growth, which was called Homegrown, because we were growing homes on farmland. And that all led me to my big film that John has seen, both Johns, called Ground Operations, Battlefields to Farm Fields. So for the last 10 years, I've been working with combat veterans from Iraq and Afghanistan who come back and transition into organic. And, we were calling it sustainable, but obviously sustaining what's there is not enough, and it's gone to regenerative. But many of the veterans are involved in that, and we used the film to build a nationwide movement. So we went from 12 veterans on a farm tour to about 22,000 members now in the Farmer Veteran Coalition. So it's doing very well. I essentially retired from filmmaking 2 years ago and have been functioning instead as a consultant to different people who are looking at different projects and whatnot, to just lend whatever I can from my experience and the contacts I have. And that's my best way. I'd written a note to the Johns that's probably my best way, because I'm an hour and a half away, so each way. So I'd rather connect you with the people I know and the organizations I know that are doing things, and then come down every once in a while when we're doing something that we need all hands on deck. And that'd probably be my best way. I will say that because of the work with combat vets, I can tell you, especially in working with homeless or disenfranchised people, that I know the healing capacity of growing food for people who have really had a hard time, or may still be having a really hard time. And I mean, literally, I feel like farming saves lives. And so I think that, so my piece of your rich puzzle here would be primarily in the agricultural sector. I think the fastest way you get a lot of people working together is in small community gardens, and to have them all over the place. One of the stories that I'll leave you with in my film, and then I'll sign off for now, is about a young man named D'Artagnan Scorza in Inglewood, which is its own city, even though it's in LA, essentially. A Navy veteran who came back, went back to the high school he graduated from as a UCLA graduate, started a program there for young Black men, built it up, said, what do you want to do? And they said, we want to grow food, because it's a food desert in Inglewood. So I was filming him at the time that they were just beginning to build that organization and what they were doing. And they were like doing gardens and old crack lots and, one thing or another around the school. And that went on to become a huge organization, which will put you in touch with on the west side of the city, they would have tree giveaways, and the story in the film is about them giving 1,000 fruit trees to 1,000 families, with workshops on how to plant them, how to prune them, how to care for them, all of that. Next year, they did it with 2,000 trees and 2,000 families. And they built it so much that now they have a farmer's market going there. And this from a city that had squat, they had nothing going. So I can bring kind of people and projects to yours to see where there's alliances and where people have done things that we can share in what they've done. I mentioned to them in my email that in Santa Cruz, they have the Santa Cruz Homeless Garden Project, which is a really good model. So the homeless they work for 6 weeks. They have to be chosen. They work for 6 weeks. They get the skills of planting, harvesting one thing or another, so that they get paid a pittance. They get a meal at lunch. They all sit down to a group meal. They work maybe 4 hours a day. And so they start getting money. They start getting self-confidence. They start getting some experience, and then they can go out and get some jobs after the fact. So they're really good to work with. And that's it for me, folks.
Could we have your name one more time, please?
Pardon me?
Would you spell your name for us one more time?
Oh, sure. Delaney is D-L-A-N-I-E Ellis, E-L-L-I-S.
Thank you.
Okay. So can the online section of the meeting hear what's being said right now? Okay, great. So first of all, Dennis, how are we doing on time?
It's just 1:10. We got plenty of time.
Okay, great. So I'm just gonna read off what so far is on the agenda, and people can add to it or offer to take away things. But so far what's on the agenda is first to have some updates of where we're at in the project. I know John has things to say in terms of where we're at, maybe describe a little bit more detail of what the project might be. After that, we were hoping to have a conversation around what organization, if there's people that are part of organizations, I'm not really part of an organization, but if you're part of an organization, what role do you imagine you'd like to have in this project as an organization? And then the next two sections would be, okay, what are our next steps after this meeting? And what roles and responsibilities do we need at this point to at least achieve those next steps? And then maybe a quick checkout. Is there anything else that feels important to be part of this particular meeting?
Some singing.
Singing? Maybe at the end of the checkout.
Kumbaya.
Yeah, we'll have some music here.
Okay.
John plays guitar.
We'll do maybe like a singing checkout.
Yeah, there you go.
We should play the period torch song.
Great. And yeah, the other thing is like this is my first time doing half online and half in person, and so just like I want to encourage to lead the people that are on in person to be in both worlds and don't just be here or just here.
Yeah,
but
that's
really find a way to mediate between both the worlds at the same time.
It's funny how I'm focusing on the screen and the
room. But anyway, so unless there's nothing else to add to the agenda.
Well, I would just suggest, having been a mediator in the past, status, needs and interests, and roles of the willing, and coming up with either a plan or a settlement or whatever. Ultimately, we make our own strategy and set our own mission at the end. But right now, if we can get a status of where Birdhouse is and what the needs and interests of the Birdhouse crew, that's obviously involving all of us now, but certainly, you and Johnny and Jessica, and I have to remember.
Tunisia.
Right.
Okay, so I don't know if I'm fully, what is it that needs to be added to the agenda? What is your request?
At the end, roles of the willing.
Roles. Yeah. Is it okay if I add that in the roles and responsibilities?
Of course.
section?
Yeah.
Okay, so the next. Okay. So then we would move towards, unless, is there anything else that needs to be added? Everyone okay with the agenda?
We may know later.
Okay, we can always go back to it. Okay, the next topic is updates. And I know John would be a good place to start, and then we can go from there.
So I hope you can hear. Are you able to hear everybody? Okay.
Yes.
So I just wanted to tell you that I've been dreaming a lot. And in the dreaming that I had, the first thing that happened, I was dreaming about camping and camps and landscapes being restored all over the world. And so that started 4 years ago. And now there are 37 camps in 6 continents around the world where many people are having the same dream. And I really think, as I recently learned from Paul Stamets, if you have the mycelial network, when the bacteria, which are very critical early stages of fertility, when they touch the mycelial network, they're able to go anywhere in the networks instantly. So that's like the superhighway. And I think we're somewhere like that now. We're here at before I was studying ecology for the last 30 years, I was a journalist, international journalist, covering like really big stories, the rise of China, the collapse of the Soviet Union, that sort of thing. And what it strikes me is that we're at a critical moment in human civilization on a planetary scale. And so something's going to happen. I promise you. Actually, I also found out, like, if I'm there, something's going to happen. So that's a strange phenomenon.
I'll testify.
So, yeah, I mean, I have to be careful, because if I'm somewhere, the possibility of enormous transformational change is kind of there. Like China will go from poverty to a superpower, or the Soviet Union will collapse, or, you know, something is going to happen. And so I think right now, the thing that got me when I came to California this year and kind of got stuck here was that the coastal forests in California are critical to the entire continent here. That the moisture that evaporates off the Pacific Ocean, it comes in, and it has led to an expression of the highest expression of evolutionary succession on the earth that I've ever seen. So I've been to 6 continents, 90 countries, looking at ecosystems. And this one has the highest canopy, and it has the largest, most ancient trees, and that are remaining. Like you can see in the Middle East, you can see in China, you can see in some other places that there were climax equilibriums which probably equaled this, but they were lost thousands of years ago. And so the impacts here, I'm kind of calculating and just guessing on the ages, but I think it's in the last 250 years, there's been impact here. Before that, it was cared for 15,000 years by the indigenous people. And they knew and worshiped it, the biome as a sacred space. And what I found was that it's now maybe 3 to 5% remaining of this climax equilibrium. So it's wonderful that this 3 to 5% exists so we can see it, but it's tiny in comparison to what it was in the beginning. And so these ancient trees I started considering what I've learned, and I realized that the water was in the trees. You know, the water is in the trees. It's not in the just in the surface or the subsurface geologic systems or in the soils. It's in the biomass itself. And so if you've lost 95 to 97% of that biomass, then that's how much water you've lost from the system, from recycling. And what you understand, what I started to learn about was that the lower hydrological cycle, when it begins to cycle below the canopy, this is how it's recycled. And so there's two measurements. One is rainfall. A lot of people like say, well, what's your rainfall? And there are places with 0 rainfall and places with 150 millimeters or 500 millimeters or 1,000 millimeters, so on. But the fact is, in these kinds of climax equilibriums with microclimates below a high canopy, you can have available moisture, which is 3 to 4 times the rainfall, because it recycles. It constantly recycles through respiration. And when it's lost, you change the physics, and the temperatures on the surface become very much elevated, and it causes thermic drafts which drive moisture into the upper atmosphere. And when that happens, then the water is a greenhouse gas, as opposed to something which is going to precipitate, condense and precipitate and nurture. So I've never seen anything that was so important. And it was wonderful to be here this year to see this. I mean, I've been in the Amazon and the Congo Basin and the eastern steppe of Mongolia and up in the Himalayas and the Altai and everywhere. And, this is a magnificent example of climax equilibrium, which it takes thousands of years to achieve. So obviously it's critical to protect that, but we also have to be on a trajectory which can allow that to re-express itself. It'll take 1,000 or 2,000 years to express itself, but if we don't make the shift and we don't understand it and we don't worship these systems generation after generation, and everybody knows that it can't happen. And we have been the cause of destroying this miracle if we don't learn and understand this. So then I started seeing in stacking functions, the permaculture concept of having all the things, all the functions stacked. You don't do something as a singularity. And it strikes me that this is exactly what we need here. So at the same time that I see the importance of this natural ecosystem, I see people sleeping under the bridge. And very, very large numbers of people who are suffering. And they're suffering physically and psychologically, and they don't have any meaning in their lives often because they don't believe in the society and the economy that has grown up, because they're losers. They can't compete in there, so they will definitely lose. But that doesn't mean that they're unequal. They're still equal. You shouldn't have to buy your human rights. The human rights should come as a right, because we're all connected to all life since the beginning of time. And what I found was that I think I think that we need to stack all these problems together. I realize, like, if you're trying to address a single one of these problems, like the forest fires, or you're trying to address the hunger or the homelessness or anything, if you try to do that by itself, you're going to spend your whole lifetime and you actually can't solve that. You can just like go and put a Band-Aid on it or try to do something, but it won't work because it's all connected to all of the problems. So if you take all the problems and you put them together, there are more problems and it's harder, but at the same time, it's easier because solving all these problems together makes it possible to address this. So I started thinking about creator spaces. We were calling them maker spaces, but somebody recommended creator spaces, and I think that's a better word. And that might be also very good for the religious communities and others to join this thing. It's the creator spaces, and we're stewards, and we're a community. And how can there be hunger? How can there be hunger and unemployment and homelessness in a place which is this wealthy? It's kind of terrifying. And I mean, it's worse here than it is in China, or it is in Europe, or anywhere else, in Africa and South America. I've never seen anything like it. It's terrible. So we have to really recognize that we have to deal with this, and that this is connected to all these other problems. So I realized that if we started creator spaces, we could make central kitchens. And if we made central kitchens, we better make showers and saunas, and we probably should make some clothing banks and laundry facilities and these sorts of things. But once we started this, and then we could look at the other side of this, and there's all these supermarkets or shopping centers that have gone out of business, and they're dangerous places, and they're boarded up, and they're horrible, and they're also big resources. We need to take some of those in collaboration with the authorities. We need to go to the authorities. I think the person to do that is Dennis and Jessica. Dennis and Jessica go and they say, hey, we've got like unlimited numbers of people who want to deal with this because they're going crazy and COVID, and they want to do something, and they want to physically do this, and we're going to take on these big problems. And then we build creator spaces that allow us to make central kitchens, that allow us to feed everyone who wants to come in to get food. Then we can also link that directly to the organic gardeners and producers. We can get the authorities to pay for the food, buy it all. And just like there should be no there is nothing, no surplus. We're going to just take it all, feed all the people the best quality food, fresh. And when there is anything that they can't eat, we process it so that there is no waste, so that we can make soups or something so that you can feed it later on. We can do dehydration, canning, freezing, fermentation.
Soup kitchens.
Well, I wouldn't call it a soup
I'm teasing you.
I wouldn't call it a soup kitchen. I'd call it a maker space, and I would put a stage there and put a giant screen and have movie night. No violence, no fake news, just like, I don't know, romantic comedies. Make everybody happy, and then have music on the weekends, have festivals on the weekends, and get everybody who's there and find out who's ambulatory and sane, and maybe more and more will join that group, and they will actually take the positions in this work. So they'll be getting work, and let's get basic incomes, and then let's move them out as they heal toward the forest areas that need to be restored, or the farm areas that need to be restored, so that there's and other people will take their places immediately, but then it will all they will that's what I've been dreaming about anyway. So I see Delaney has raised her hand.
Amen.
Have we got
To that.
Have we got her? Can we hear her?
Yeah, can you
No,
hear me?
Delaney.
Yeah. Hi.
Sorry, Delaney, we have to turn something on.
Okay,
So go ahead.
okay. Can you hear me
We
now?
don't hear you yet. It's on.
Helps to turn it back on.
Okay. Delaney? Go ahead, Delaney.
Yes, can you hear me now?
Are you
Can you hear me?
muted?
Oh, when she said that.
No, I'm not muted.
Oh, there we go.
Okay, we got you.
Okay.
We hear you.
You got me?
Yes, speak.
Yes.
Yay. Okay. Technology. Hate it when you hate it, love it when you love it. I have to say, I love your vision. And as a producer, thank you. As a producer, I know that every step of what you're talking about doing and every piece of that vision takes a lot of effort and time. And what concerns me is time because of the fast track we're on for climate change and all of that, and how long it takes to get that kind of stuff done. Now, but you've done huge projects, so you have a different experiential base probably than I do. And you think, you know, and you see that as possible, but I don't think it's possible in the short term. And what I do think we have as a very sad reality, but also an opportunity, is that unfortunately, as of tomorrow or Tuesday, December 1st, hundreds of thousands of people are going to get eviction notices when the moratorium on not kicking people out because they couldn't pay the rent due to COVID. And there are a lot of people who could take their whole family, they're homeschooling as it is. They could take their kids with them and the whole darn family could be working this up in our coastal redwoods. Because the faster we start putting together a camp, if we were putting together a camp somewhere now, or in the next couple of months, where we could literally have tenting or something. I don't know what the deal is with COVID and all of that, whether you have individual tents, I don't know. But I know that there's going to be a whole lot of landless people who are already in the jet stream of middle class. You know, they have gone to work, they know about motivation and stuff. I've also worked with the homeless and with really traumatized veterans. And it's really hard to get them to show up. They're just, their skill sets have really been damaged for being able to be like responsible, show up on a regular way, be motivated to do the work, all of that. So that's my experience. And I'm just throwing that into the ring of saying, how can we move ahead with this faster with a whole growing squadron of people who are going to need something to do now?
Delaney, it sounds like you might have an idea, an insight.
Well, what do you mean? You mean the answer to all that?
How would you answer your own question? Do you have any ideas?
Yeah, I mean, you know, I don't know how far you've pursued looking for, because I had heard that John was looking at Paradise about a year ago or so. When I met you at with Margie and Wes up at the Santa Barbara Permaculture screening, I remember you were talking about Paradise. Do you have any place that will welcome you in to do this kind of work? Yeah,
I think there
are five or six camps already in California, and there are numerous other ones, and I think we're probably going to be better off with Dennis when he takes it on, because I've seen hundreds of acres and buildings and facilities and stuff. So it's I think if we do this in a distributed way, it's obviously impossible for me to restore California, but if Californian people decide that they're going to do it, I don't think there's anything that can stop them. And you know, we have a crisis. This is like a war zone. This is like I've seen this kind of thing in northern Uganda or Kenya. You know, this is grotesque, with all these people who are needing food and homes and meaning and work. This is really so yeah.
I'm just thinking it would be faster with it's like a once in a lifetime weird kind of tragedy opportunity where there are going to be so many people who otherwise you're trying to rehab the homeless and create all of that stuff of creator spaces and kitchens and stuff is fabulous, but it will take you more time. Like I just thought I would throw that out there. But yes, I do think there are ways that if you know where there are places where, if you've already got 5 going, do they need more people coming in? You know, is there a way to address this huge group of people who are going to be flailing for what to do and where to go? And they are tomorrow's homeless. I mean, literally within a month or two, once they've couch surfed enough, they're going to be our new homeless class. And we could, if we could have places to put them in the forests now with program managers or training program managers out of those people, people who've been working, but it's not enough to save them because their job got canceled. Those minds are already still active. You know, you're not trying to bring them back from drug addiction or street trauma. So I think, there are definitely ways you tap into who those people are. You know, we just find out in the bureaucracy who are on those lists.
So I hear you saying that we have different clientele.
That this new group coming on, they're in better shape because they're not so
Clientele.
damaged.
Can I jump in for a sec?
Yeah.
I've been having meetings with a group that's a bunch of executives and entrepreneurs and everything who have been looking at this situation, and we're trying to figure out, you know, how we can be a part of the solution. We're looking at, you know, possibly purchasing land and creating a space like this. But to the point that Delane was making in speaking with David Rue's office and some city planners in Pasadena and Burbank, they said the same thing, that it's like, it's much easier to save people from being homeless than to try to rehab the homeless. So it seems like you have 2 tracks, really. Like if you can go in and get these people active and working before they hit the streets, you have like crisis averted hundreds of thousands of people, you know, however many people from becoming homeless. And then the slower track would be those who are already on the streets, which you could be working on sideline. But it seems like you really need to meet both needs. Otherwise, we have this exponential crisis on our hands of, you know, the already existing homeless population and now this whole new incoming wave. So I think that if we think of it in terms of 2 tracks, in a sense, then we could potentially help both groups. But I think you're right, Delane, that it is really important to catch this new wave before they are on the street and start falling into addiction and mental health issues and things like that.
I'm just curious.
I also put out that, you know, if you can get, like, in terms of housing, you know, with an effort like this to restore the coastal redwoods and the forests, at the same time that we're stacking the function of resisting a new group of, you know, serving a new group that would become homeless if they don't have someplace to go. If you run a campaign of how many people have their RVs stored in some lot, you know, the number of RVs that are just being stored is just outrageous in this country. But if people could donate them for tax advantages, for whatever, for money from the government. I mean, if the government doesn't want to give money, just throw it into the wind to people. They could do things like this. If you have a whole little town of RVs that give temporary housing to family units, you know, that could be a way where you're not having to pay for the infrastructure to get the infrastructure of housing. So it's those kind of ideas that I would pursue that are outside the box, but that excite people. Because when I did ground operations, just like this, I had two disparate problems with a common solution. I had older farmers who were retiring. The kids didn't want the farm, and they needed a new generation of farmers to come in that they could train in and all of that. Separate issue was the combat veterans needing meaningful new work and a suicide rate of 22 people a day. So we start with putting them together and bringing veterans into agriculture, gave them a new purpose, a new meaning in their life. It's the good news story. So I guess that we could do that and be training for these people who lost their jobs, be training new forest managers.
Well, and also, let's not forget the aging out foster youth population, that we have young people who need something to do. And, you know, this would be a great opportunity for them, and also to be connected and to be learning and to be growing with mentorship. You know, it would be phenomenal for this population as well, which is another very fast growing homelessness population.
We keep skipping over Tunisia because it's hard to.
I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. It's all good.
I think it's really important to kind of put our feet on the ground and see who really wants to do this work, and work with the people that are already doing it. Because yes, we're recognizing at-risk populations and like foster children and mentally disabled people or whomever, and people who are about to become homeless. But if I'm about to become homeless, that's not my focus. I'm so stressed out, and I've been in that position before. So I think that for me to think that someone that is living in a house somewhere in LA that may want to all of a sudden move to the redwood forest and live with or without plumbing, that's a big jump. That's a huge jump. So I kind of wanted to reintroduce gravity, I think, a little bit. Not to say that everything that's been said isn't a reality. I just want to work from a working person's, a blue-collar person's point of view. Unless I've already been gardening, this is not reality thing. This is not something that I'm going to set aside time for. So the way that I think that can happen is talking to people that are already influential. In my neighborhood, just from building a garden, I've got like 5 or 6 people that are like constantly knocking on my door to help me with my garden. People that want to have space to learn, people that want to understand canning and preservation, people that I'm big on trying to monetize things that we already know how to do. How can we turn lemongrass from the garden into a seed to be sold by people in that neighborhood? So to me, that's one of the most important first steps, is to reach out to the people. Say, for example, a neighbor came by and said, why don't you sell your fruit from your garden to the Paul Robeson Project? What is that? Well, they already have a group of people in South Central that are producing things in their garden, and people are already purchasing from this network. So that to me is where we need to put our feet back on the ground and reach out to the people that are already in there. No offense, but if a lot of people from this group showed up at my neighborhood and said, well, hey, this is what you're not going to get one piece of respect or response. But if you're working through the Paul Robeson Foundation, if you're working with people that are already picking, I'm working with people that are already picking in backyards. If you're working with those people, you will reach the woman who doesn't have a place to go. As a matter of fact, she's going to kill me, but the woman that saved those homes in Oakland is one of my great friends from a shop I had in San Francisco. So working with her to figure out what she needs to get down to LA to connect with those people in El Sereno that just backed up a whole cadre of the police department because of homes in El Sereno that were supposed to go for the 710 or whichever. They backed those police officers up. No violence, and they only got this much of coverage on the news. So if we can empower the people that are already on the ground and figure out from those groups, hey, are there people, because I've been talking, there's plenty of brown hippie people, like, hey, would you move? Hell yeah, I'd move to the Redwood Forest, you know, it's with an understanding that there's already a brown community, with an understanding that there's a group of people that understand me already, and I don't have to reestablish my brownness or blackness. So that's where I'm coming from. I think just really reestablishing where maybe, say for example, I just found out that this gentleman understands a lot of, I forget his name already. Dennis understands a lot about land stuff. That's something that would be great to connect with the people in my neighborhood. I live in,
Let's make him an honorary black.
I wouldn't go that far. Say, for example, the people in my neighborhood are trying to do an HPOV. So having you come to one of our meetings, a historic preservation overlay zone, having you come to our meetings and be like, yeah, this is what I understand, that would help legitimize them and be like, hey, we have this connection outside of our community that can help us in a real way to where maybe we'll have real inroads with the government, because frankly, we have a white face here that can help us move through things.
You can be a token.
Well, I mean, so there are a lot of ways.
There are black-faced and brown-faced and, you know, red-faced people who are in municipal government that are just like me.
Right, but we've
And,
got, they're
you-
not connected to the people where I am.
But we can find those folks quickly.
Well,
That's the whole point.
Well, for me, it's about finding those people at different tax brackets.
Correct.
Right, and
Yeah.
connecting the people that may be at my level with the people that are already kind of moving in that sphere,
Sure.
but not really getting things done. So people at my level want to sort of sidestep or find different ways to meet people like the lady, to meet people on these different, like yourself, on these different levels to really take care of things. So that, to me, is the most important part. Again, just to reiterate, you know, who's already doing the work and how can we support them in meaningful ways that don't overstep the line. So that's really where I'm at and where I think we may want to build from.
That sounds like a great ground to start from. Beautiful.
Exactly what needs to happen.
And so in that way, we can create a database of, look, I'm sorry, what did you say, the group that brought you here?
Kiss the Ground.
Kiss the Ground. I just heard about that. Now it's like, okay, I met the woman from Kiss the Ground. So I'd like to bring that back to my neighborhood and, hey, can we support her? Can we replicate this? How do we, you know, start throwing ripples out to everyone else? So to me, that's my purpose here and where I think the groundwork should really come from.
The verbiage you just used, that's where the groundwork should come from, is a critical statement. Obviously, kiss the ground. The groundwork you're talking about, tilling the ground, planting the ground, recognizing the ground is critical to survival. And if you break things down, everything is, you know, water, you know, atmosphere, land. I'll get it right. I used the acronym WEALTH, WEALTH, water, energy, atmosphere, land or soil, technology, and humanity. Because the humanity side is why we're doing all this in the first place. And it's a simple thing to remember, but it's very deep. And we can each use that in a way that meets the needs of everything I've been writing notes about right now, whether you're a big organization or a small one, you're funded or you're underfunded or not funded at all. And the issue that Delaney talked about, which is my concern most of anything, is timing. We're in a crisis. We're adding 200,000 people a day with COVID-19 in this country alone. And that isn't going to change too quickly, sadly, but that actually sets us all on an emergency exit or entrance level, with the country that we live in. So That's why I'm here, in fact, is to deal with the issue of the speed. And the way I got into this organization, just quickly to say, and we are already an organization, is through the efforts of the Regenerate folks. If you haven't heard of them, hope we'll talk about them today, and also the 7 Vortex folks, because with the representational graphology or graphics they have, we can actually create a dynamic flow chart as opposed to rows and columns and, you know, statistical analysis and all that stuff. But what are the relationship issues? It's like each of us comes from such a different place, but if there's 6, 7 bubbles, I can tell you Hugo at 7 Vortex puts those 7 bubbles, and each of those 7 bubbles have 7 more bubbles. And then you realize that you can actually add color, and you can say there's a green bubble and a brown bubble and whatever. And then there's size and variability in the connectivity. And then you can look for the most efficient ways to actually represent the problem that you're describing and the solution that you're hoping for. And then the mission becomes, how do you bring the two into right relationship somehow?
For me, historically, after I chilled out from that initial, oh my God,
yeah,
what the hell is going on? I realized that this is nothing different from, say, the Great Depression, from the Great Dust Bowl, from the Gold Rush. A huge reorganization in society is happening. How do we place ourselves to be able to capitalize in a positive way, I think is what I'm hearing from this group. And I always like to go back to the Gold Rush people. The people that were looking for gold nuggets didn't get rich. The people that were servicing those people got rich.
That's
and
right.
They had the foresight to look ahead and set up services to support these people. And I think we're in that frame right now to be able to set things up for people, even though it's happening rapidly. I think if we were to slow down and refocus, and again, slow down, refocus, and look at our influence, right? Just through Facebook alone, I generate a lot of business for myself. I was able to put together like a mini C-thing from a woman that, I have a discount. Okay, and she also believes in a lot of things we're doing here. So for me, again, it's just looking at who's already in your network and just saying what you can do. I think for a lot of us, what might help us out and even figuring out an objective is, look, this is my resume. This is what I think I can do. Who else is in that same boat with me? And so at that same time, we can attack on those different levels. You know, maybe I'm super into soil, so I'm a soil sister. Okay, well, I'm into canning, so I'm all about that. How do we bring all of our expertises together without muddling them and really focus, really get back to that lean production and really, or specialized production really, on what we can do together? I think.
So when I hear that, I agree, couldn't agree more, that we all have these networks that are, in my network, my bubble, so to speak, I have so many people that would jump into action if they knew what to do.
And we just don't know, but I think if we were to organize ourselves.
We do know what to do, and I feel like that's what we're doing now, isn't it? Like organize, trying to figure out.
Mr. Facilitator, bring us back to the camera, all right?
I think that's exactly what we're doing right now. We're still very much in the unknown of what we're doing, but to me, it seems like through this conversation, and there was you kind of made a call on Zoom, and through that conversation, there's starting to be a little bit more formation, and it's natural for things to go from kind of fluid to crystallizing over time. So I think that we're doing this, and through this process, we're going to get to something that's more substantial. It's just awkward when it's not there yet.
China?
I feel like, I'm just aware of time, and I'm aware of what we're wanting to get to in this meeting, and so I'm aware we're not going to figure it all out in this meeting.
We have another hour, no problem.
And there's been a conversation about kind of our connections, which is the next agenda item. So you can speak, and after you speak, unless there's anything really important, I'm going to shift this towards the organizations that we represent.
It's actually a comment on the agenda itself. I think roles and responsibility, I think all the things we're talking about are so helpful. I think to know where to start, I imagined, and I wasn't sure sort of how the agenda was going to go, but I imagined this first meeting being more of a, when you're building a company or when you're building a ship or when you're building a water bottle, whatever you're building, right? Like, we all first agree on the vision, right? And so, I think what I'm hearing, is, John, kind of what you said is like, okay, cool, this is the overarching mission. And then, Jennifer and Delaney talking more about, okay, is there a target market that we can serve first, right? Is there like a specific group of people that we can start with, and then, remind me your name again. Who spoke?
Oh, me? Okay.
Tunisia.
Like the country. Or you guys can just call me TT, that's fine.
And
That's easy. Okay, so you can call me V. And so then what I'm hearing you saying is sort of like this, we get to be almost like the connective tissue between a lot of the things that already exist so that we can actually effectively execute forward and almost systemize what is already there. So I'm curious, I would be curious if you guys are open to this, and it might not be this meeting, maybe it's the next meeting, but I think it might be useful for all of us to just put say a one-liner of why are we here, and have the note taker take that down of and then we can start developing what is it that we want to build, because it's we can't even know how to leverage or what to specialize. Also, for me, for example, I am here because I want to be able to, the amount of homeless people that I've just hung out with in this past week and this experience that is van life, because I can now oh, it's getting cold tonight. I'm thinking the same thing that person's thinking, it's a whole different perspective and experience. And so I've really been connecting with more homeless people than I ever have before in my life. And ironically, because John, I think just because of your passion and things you've said, it's been brought to light, and so I've met so many people this week, and so many of them were not deep in their addictions or deep in this, just unfortunate circumstances. And I was wishing there was a place that I could send them. That to me is a goal, is part of what we want, a place where we can send people. So I feel if maybe we can make a list of the things that we want this to be, then we can narrow it down. And then also I think simultaneously we should be making a database of who's doing what where, because I agree, no matter what, we're gonna have to leverage those networks. Thanks for the time. Yeah.
Who wants to go next? Why are you here?
I'll take a shot.
Okay.
I need a
can't
cord
matter.
because it's dying.
Can you hear without this?
I don't know.
Yes.
It's Dennis. And before, actually, we can go to low power mode, can't we?
Yeah.
I'm just going to go to low power mode so we get a little bit more out of this. I'm here because of the serendipity of meeting the two Johns and having my son-in-law tell me that he knows a guy who has kind of a magic formula, which is the regenerate virtual Gaia structure that they've been developing for some years now. And it's virtually on the edge of doing a virtual Gaia. If you don't know what the Gaia principle is, Gaia is the whole planet as a living thing in simplest terms, but the complexity of that from, microbiota to, soaring eagles to skyscrapers in New York City, that's all part of the deal. Well, we're not going to change much of that built structure, but if we mimic the biota and work as individuals, maybe as a tribe around this table right now, and that's what we're doing, there's an opportunity around the campfire to take the next step, to say, I don't have to wait for the city council to approve a budget that has to wait until next June in order to get a few bucks together to be able to buy a piece of property or use it or change it or whatever. So I want to use the technology that is available through what I've discovered with the folks at 7 Vortex and at Regenerate to link everything we've talked about today through virtual Gaia. And they are literally ready to launch the physical product. And it'll astound you when you look at it if you haven't seen it yet. And that's the reason I'm here, is to learn any of the constraints that are still in place to be able to have such a thing in order to help the birdhouse or the headwaters of the Los Angeles River in Calabasas, or the water district of the Las Virgenes area in the Santa Monica Mountains that might ultimately turn our wastewater into drinking water. We've already done it. There is a demonstration project that's there. Well, that's just one little teeny piece, but that could go to Israel, or it could go to France, or it could go to Canada. It's actually convincing the city of Los Angeles to take all the billion gallons a day that go through the Hyperion treatment plant and then get dumped in the Pacific Ocean because they're regulated by the EPA for clean water. We can turn that water into usable asset very quickly. And we need help. We need labor that's actually in the city of LA to be able to make the conversion and do it fast. And that's the problem with what we heard from, I guess it was Veronica that, actually it was Delaney. You said that we've got a timing problem, and we sure do. I mean, to get a bond issue passed to fix the Hyperion treatment plant, you know, that's a 20-year project. And we aren't gonna last that long. That's the real truth, unless we do something about it. And that's what John has inspired me with, as he's had his experience around the world. Anyway, I've talked much longer than I should. My wife tells me, stop talking.
So just to repeat the question, why are you here? And more specifically, what is the vision you imagine us doing together? Is that accurate? Yeah.
I think I answered it.
Sure.
If I could just add that the reason that I'm here is because I'm here. And
good idea.
So if I were somewhere else, I would be doing the same thing, but I would be doing it there. And I can't help but notice what's happening here. And so I don't feel like I'm going to be here long enough to solve this, but I think I might have an interesting role to play in perhaps catalyzing a lot of different individuals and organizations to join together in a collaborative effort. So the idea is not to build a new institution, but it's to build a movement that brings all the existing institutions and identifies where the gaps are and works immediately to go into those gaps. And I think the thing that I noticed, and I agree that you might need a double track, parallel tracks, because if you had the people who were completely healthy and ready to go, and they could go out into the forest and start big nursery systems and restoring the viability of the soils and the runoff and the watershed, that would be huge. But what I see now is that the most in need, the people who are most in need are lying on the side of the street. And, you know, so I don't really feel like we can just go out into the forest and deal with only the forest, because all these people, I don't think you'll have a forest if these people don't get fixed up, because we'll be like locusts. Humans will be like locusts, taking everything. I've seen this happen. I mean, they were eating bark in North Korea in the terrible famine that they had there. So, you know, just unthinkable. So I think what we need to do is go to these creator spaces, and some could be rural and some could be urban, but the first ones I think we got to go with, we have to identify where the people are and where the dead Toys R Us buildings or the dead places are, and see if we can at least get them temporarily turned over to do something. Those also have big parking lots. Why don't we invite the van life people to come in there and help run it? they need a place to park. Well, park there and then work all day. I mean, come on, let's
Right.
get this working, and we can do that. I think that the food bank idea isn't working very well. It looks like lines and lines of cars driving through places. I think we better get central kitchens if we get, I just mentioned that the van life people need to have a role to play so they can all go park in the parking lots and then help out. But if we have food processing as well as cooking in these central kitchens, and we can strategically identify where those places are and where the people in need are, and then we can have kitchens to do processing, and we can have cold storage, and we can make kombucha. I mean, I think all the people who are hungry should be drinking kombucha and having really the best organic food. That's the best case. Delaney.
A large-scale example of what you just said was the recovery process of the hurricanes that destroyed Puerto Rico. And interestingly enough, one of the important leaders of the recovery effort came from California, and he was the state conservationist of the state of California. And he was sent there by the USDA Natural Resources Conservation Service, and he was basically seconded from California for almost a year and a half to go and deal with exactly what you said, which is feeding the hungry and the homeless, doing at least what they could to restore the integrity of the shelter that they needed to have, because there were more hurricanes coming after the ones that wiped them out. So, and then you had all the political interference, of course, along the way, and that's what the locals can avoid. As long as this isn't a political football at the state or the federal level, and people are just setting up a kitchen. And there was a famous chef from New York who went down there, and he cooked for 200,000 people every day. And he taught people how to cook and eat.
World Kitchen, and that would be a good model to look into to figure out how the hell he got around the health code laws for a kitchen. Because, it may be though that, like, for example, and I don't know that this is true at all, but let's say churches are an exemption on all of the health, as long as they meet basic health codes. So then you make your nonprofit, you set it up as a religious nonprofit or something. There are ways to figure out how to get around that bureaucracy, because they will stop you in your tracks otherwise. But the good thing that I heard, the idea of the van people is wonderful. I think because you have big parking lots, you can also do, like 2-foot high raised gardens right on asphalt if you've got enough height, and or you can do aquaponics inside. But if you got van people doing that, and the other best idea I heard was foster care, the kids who are coming out who are 18, if they can be pulled into that, then they get the family they're wanting. They get the people there who are all working on a common cause. Those are populations that you can draw on right away. My contacts in the veteran world might kick some veteran people in that would know how to do that. So I think that that's really smart. And I think that the van people then create their own security for the gardens. So although usually there's a security guard, somebody to keep the peace that's hired for that kind of situation at night. But I think that's the foster kids and the van levers it seems to me to be like the two of the best ideas of the day. Over and out.
Does anyone have more to add in terms of envisioning what we're doing to kind of like bring to the group to help us have a cohesiveness moving forward?
Yeah. Over here, this is the one with the
city planning. As far as you got.
Okay. I don't have a clear exact thing. I think just getting to know John these last few days, I think the different way that his mind works and the experiences around the world are incredibly important for this moment that feels like we're creating institutions that are different from the ones that got us here. So I think we're in this in-between phase where we're dealing with all the same problems we've always dealt with in the field that we've worked in and every place that we've lived. And all of those things are breaking right now. And so this group seems to be a group that is trying to create the new thing, which hasn't been done before. So it's tough to say quite exactly what it is. I think what's really inspiring is that it's a bunch of doers, like the fact that this place exists, the fact that you've already lived in many camps, the fact that you already have these connections. And I think also, like, for example, Kiss the Ground group that I started back in the day has evolved, you know, without me for years, but is going through its own sort of growing pains now because it's a nonprofit. The people that are a part of it, all of it, it's like they're hitting a point where they're like, what do we do now in this world? You know, what do we do in the face of all of this and our own internal struggles? So I feel like I could, and any number of us could probably plug that group in too to try something new. Like this would be new for them. It'd be like, this connection would be like, they'd be going outside of probably what they normally do for their grants and all of this, but like, we have to do this thing now, you know? And the emergency of the van life people, like I already know people that have fallen off or that are in, or just transitioned to van life, you know, by choice ahead of time, but seeing it coming. Yeah, it's so complex, like nature, but also like our institutions are not built to align with nature. Which is why the natural world is falling apart, which is why we're falling apart. So this is the kind of thinking that is coming together. So that's what inspires me.
I have a few things to add. I don't necessarily need camera in my face. But
No, it's just the microphone's there.
for me, I would like to see I like the idea of Gaia because that's a lot of how I function. Restructuring capitalism so that it actually works for nature and all of us. I think for me, that's a huge component for the way I work. For me, I'd like to have food deserts be a thing, because all up and down California, I've lived in food deserts. Wherever there are Black people or brown people, there are food deserts. I would like to see, one big thing is I'd like to see refrigerators be cut in half. I'd like to have living stuff in my refrigerator. I'd like for people to understand that you can grow your own food and have fresh herbs on your sill, and you don't have to go to the market for that. But also not to punish farmers for that, and have the idea of the central kitchen is something I've been kicking around for quite a while, and being able to really have things go in a circle. So I think that's a huge thing for me. How do I make all of this go in a circle, and how do I make it work for everyone? And not just in the circle, but in the circle of life, in the Gaia, completely, whether you're in it, whether you realize you're in it or not.
Could I put my hand up again for 1 second to just say I didn't finish because I realized you asked me a question and I didn't answer it, and that is that I'm confused because it feels like to me that there are different missions and different projects. And they may be parallel, but to consider it as one mission that to do all of this, dealing with homeless and central kitchen and everything, in hopes that it's going to feed you enough people to go replant forests. To me, that I'm not getting a synchronization there. I see those as two, not that they wouldn't each maybe in some way feed each other, but I see those as two very different missions.
If I can respond to that, I actually had a feeling and experience when I was first talking to John, and something that's formulated since then, and since a call that we did the other day, is the idea of the
Veronica, can you move closer to your sound?
Oh, sorry, yeah. Sorry, I'll lift it too. Just the idea of these central kitchen spaces, and in my mind, that was something that was for people who are already homeless and would potentially need rehab, originally, the way I had imagined it. And it became sort of like, a rehab space, you know, but not like a rehab space, you know, but like a place where people are pulling themselves out of a mindset of consistently not having enough, by providing for people in our community that have been left behind. Now with the van life thing, and also with the people planting and ecosystem restoration camps and things like that, you know, what I've been learning in the van life community is that there's so many people who already want that. I mean, most van lifers already have this vision. Most van, I mean, these, like I'm, you know, somebody's fixing my van right now who's a 24-year-old who has 2 gallons of recirculating water that can go for 30 hours with UV filtration and 7 different filters. And he has just 2 gallons of water creating these like incredible showers. I mean, these kids are gnarly. I mean, and they want to build communities like this with like recirculating water with like incredible irrigation systems, you know, and they know a lot about composting and compostable toilets. So I see that like the van life, the nomadic people, as I'm sort of starting to realize there's so many people who are actually nomads right now, want a space that is like a place where they can go and be with the land and grow their own food. And so I actually see that, and this is obviously, we're just ideating here, but it's almost like we have the central kitchens. It's sort of like the first step. And then I think if that were a way we were going to go, there would have to be some kind of like therapy, wellness, support systems in place that are also then like like being like, okay, cool. Like, yeah, you've been here for this amount of time. Like, you've really been contributing. This is so great. Like, you know, you can stay here, or you're also free to go to like, you know, whatever ecosystem camps, whatever, you know, almost like it's like a stepping stone back, like a stairway back in, you know, because I think it is a jolt, just like it's a jolt. And I love that you said this, TT, like to go from like your house, your mansion, to be like, let me go live in a tent in the redwoods. Like for a lot of people, that's not gonna fly, you know? And then also, but the other way, the jolt's the other way of being homeless on the street and then going right into like a community and an ecosystem, but that's also really hard. So I see this like creator kitchen thing, these creator shops being sort of the in-between holding space that doesn't exist right now.
Can I piggyback on you real quick? I really think that for me, that's why I think we shied away from the soup kitchen part of it. For me, it's just everyone. It's not necessarily just for people, because I think that's a huge class divide when we only look at the creator kitchens as people that need to use it to build their lives. I think I watched a documentary where it's like, I think in Sweden, they have these communities where like they're old people and young people. There was a mother who was recently divorced. You saw that documentary? She's like recently divorced, kind of depressed, and she had like a 5-year-old. Well, Nana was helping her with the 5-year-old, and then she had community with all these people, and she was learning all these different crafts that she didn't want to leave. She just wanted to live in this community forever. So I think, to me, for the kitchen, because I would love to go to a kitchen to do like canning classes and things like that. That's kind of already been in. I've talked to Robin about like these creator spaces are enormous, but also from having my shop in San Francisco and trying to start a cafe there, it was introduced to me and having lived in co-ops where you basically use the co-op system. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. It's already there where people, look, you live here in exchange for your work shift hours, right? You, if we have a kitchen where maybe this guy can pay $20 for the meal and this guy can't, you pay what you can. That was explained to me at my shop by somebody that kind of went around living in these different type of spaces. So I think for me, Delaney, to answer your question, I think it is interwoven because the same people that are vanning are going to be the same people that are doing biodiesel, and they're going to be the same people that want to van to your new commune on the side, you know. So I seriously, those are the same people that care about holistic health, and the same people that care about, the same Black people that care about doing natural hair are the same people that will come and live on the side of the ocean. So to me, it's really, a lot of these issues circulate. I mean, a lot of us will say, yeah, I have that friend. We all have that friend. Just looking around, we all have that friend who'll pick up and do it if we're not that friend ourselves. So to me, again, it's just cultivating that network of, okay, who's in a co-op already? How do we take your system and make it work for for this? How do we, if we're gonna have 100 people going to live on the coast somewhere, how do we set up and be responsible to our space? How are we responsible to our native people that are already there? So to me, it just kind of rolls in place. You'll get a kid from the inner city that wants to learn, but maybe they don't understand or have a vehicle. Well, then I have a truck. Well, then boom, there's a space for you here, and we've set it up. There's so many people that you know already. I'm just, as I'm speaking, I know a woman that took a group of kids from San Francisco, Bayview Hunters Point, to Peru because she wanted to, and she wanted to raise money for that. So how do we leverage these people that are already making it happen into this network so that we don't have to reinvent? There's already somebody there doing it. How do we bring them in?
Yeah.
Well, and also to piggyback on that, TT, I mean, one of the best ways that we rehab people or that we help aging out foster youth is by living in mixed community, like not just with other homeless people or not just with other foster youth, but living in mixed community where we can create mentorship and we can, there's education piece, they're learning about eating well and how that affects your mental health and how that affects your mood and your productivity and how all this food comes from the ground. I mean, most of my kids, I've fostered 9 kids, I've adopted 2. When they came to me, didn't know anything other than 99-cent store food or McDonald's, right? And I actually challenged my son. He wanted a McDonald's hamburger. He was trying to tell me it was really juicy. And I was like, okay, well, so I took him to an organic burger place and got him an organic burger. I said, if you can tell me this is better than McDonald's, I will take you to McDonald's. And he was like, oh my God, I didn't even know food could taste like this. Like, he had no idea. But the point being is that exposure and connection and community rehabs people better than any therapy, better than any other thing on the planet. And being in nature, also amazingly huge. And that's my goal, is to bring all this together in some way and to connect with other communities that are doing it, because we are better together. And the more that we are doing this and the more that we are using each other's resources and acting as stewards for each other, the more people we can reach. So, that's why I'm here.
Beautiful.
If I could just add something, I'm really so honored to be able to sit with all of you and be part of this, because I think it's going to go somewhere. And I think what we need to do is we need to be open, and we need to be traditional as well, because I think the powers that be are not going to disappear. They're there. And the existing organizations, I think they're doing wonderful things, but I'm also pretty sure they're overwhelmed by the scale of the problem. So there's plenty of place, and I think it's all of our duties. We have a responsibility. I feel called. I don't really feel like an Angelito or whatever you call people from
Angelina.
I don't feel like an Angelino, but I feel like I'm here, and because I'm here, I got to look here. I remember when I was in China back in the 80s, and I started to see the pollution levels increasing at incredible rates because of the industrial growth. And the people in China didn't know anything about anything. I mean, they didn't know anything about, because they were all organic before. They were peasants working in farms. And then suddenly they're in this industrial society, so they don't know anything about the chemicals. And we ended up making an organization with no money that collaborated with the State Environmental Protection Administration to bring 1,000 films on the environment and translate them into Chinese and broadcast them all over China. And we did that in Mongolia and Korea and North Korea as well. So South Korea and North Korea. So, I mean, and Mongolia was interesting because all of the people were so in a physical status that when we brought the film that's called Half the Man Your Father Was, that showed that male sperm counts around the world were half what they were a generation ago. That's the one that got their attention. They were like, oh, organic food now. It was wonderful. So we what I found was that when you see something, you got to deal with it, because if you go past it, it's going to stay there and it's going to get worse. So if we now take this on and make it a joy, I mean, I would say every night you better have a house band on that in that creator space, and lots of other bands are cycling through and playing. We can get celebrities, and I mean, this is Hollywood. Let's get some celebrities out there to say, hey, come on, everybody, let's get well. And that alone would, Will Smith comes over or somebody, make everybody happy, and let him. I mean, those people will get involved then.
I think that it's important to note, because I have a shop called Boudreaux's Cafe on 3rd Street in Bayview Hunters Point in San Francisco. I started out, I just wanted to do antiques, and I don't like to throw stuff out, and that's just how I am. And it quickly turned into a community venture. I started out with a jam session on Friday night, and then we started cooking, and then people started coming and donating food. And then that turned into Food Justice Wednesday, where everybody in the neighborhood would come through and we would talk about healthy food, how to produce it, and we would bring all the food that we found donated in the neighborhood and actually cook together. And we would share recipes, and this happened every week. And from that, we had, and this is just in my shop, we had people talking about how the developers were taking over Bayview Hunters Point. Here's space for that. Sit down and talk about it. So and then from that, we started getting the mayor coming in and, celebrities and things like that. If you build it on a ground level and it's sexy, they will come. So I don't think that if you jump out with the celebrity on top, I don't think so. I think because you kind of want to make it sexy to where an appropriate celebrity will want to attach their name to that, as far as I've got. Because as soon as I had that Friday night jam, I had all different cultures coming and jamming. So absolutely, there's a way to do it, but I think it doesn't need to be fancy. It just needs to be real. It just needs to be people. I didn't even know that in San Francisco, because I'm not from San Francisco, there's limited space. You can't make noise. I had 10,000 square feet where you could go make noise. So everybody found out, and then we were jamming.
Greater space.
It's just, and this is a space like that. And I'm trying to rebuild that space in my backyard. So you don't need 10,000 square feet. You don't need a celebrity. You just need 5 or 6 people that are willing and wanting to do it and agree on one thing and move ahead with the plan. So I think that's mostly what I'm doing for.
Right on.
Jessica?
Yeah.
Agreeing with the plan.
Jessica?
Yeah. So I just thank you everybody for your feedback and just like your beautiful thoughts and just your energy here. In listening to everybody, I feel that my world is a little bit in between. I've been working in the public sector, specifically with city municipal government, and now I've had the privilege and honor to work in a private manner. And I think that from my professional perspective, nonprofit. Well, first it started private, now it's nonprofit. So I've been a little bit, kind of looking to see what the landscape requires. And what I've noticed is that government is too big. It's just too freaking big, even small cities. And people like me who are hungry to really help communities, to really get work done, we're looking for alternative ways. And I thought maybe nonprofits. And I thought, well, nonprofits really do not have the administrative work. They don't have the financial means. They don't have the structure to be able to do it. So we need to figure out how to structure them. And then I started meeting people like Tunisia. Tunisians of the world that were creating spaces out of their own homes. And John is another person, and Bella is another person. So this trend of really focusing on a smaller project is what I started noticing as the most effective way of creating community, and not creating community in this weird sense, creating community that really understands fundamentally how important it is to be
connected to the earth and to humans. And you can't really do that in a cityscape because it's too large. And so what I told John is that what he had here in this canyon is a multiple series of demonstration sites in this very powerful place in Hollywood. And if you create central nodes in these very influential spaces and you have people that are involved in those spaces, really talking about how this is the way to live. So I would say that taking your vision, personally as somebody that I'm both worlds, I say let's find a space, find a developer here in Hollywood.
Now.
Get it done, figure out how we can do it internally if people get called to, work with the organizations that are already there because that's what you need. But more importantly, looking to create the tool that allows somebody like Tunisia to really service her community in the way that she can. But she doesn't have the administrative help or support. She doesn't have somebody looking for fundraising for her. So outside of not only creating the tools and the strategies that somebody can then take and adopt, I think creating alternative economic system, alternative governing systems that can be overlaid on cities and now can be created as alternative spaces, alternative zones. We think about these zoning spaces, but when I think about homeless people are resilient. They might be mental health, they might be war veterans, they might be rape victims, they might be all these people, but they're some of the most resilient people that I know, and they're on the streets. So I think about like, how are we creating communities where we understand fundamentally people do not function in the system? Can we be creative enough to think about a different world that even creates a more sense of sovereignty for us here?
I think with the social work, the social workers may be able to use this to get a better result and make sure to take care of everybody. So we should have if we make these creator spaces perfectly, then they could have small places where people can work. They could have open space working or shared space working, or there could be little shops and stuff. I mean, these are supermarkets. They were markets before, and they just failed.
Yeah.
So maybe that's not the way to go. It doesn't serve the community, so it's gone.
Yeah, and I would say just creating an alternative system, knowing what we know, and I think, Dennis has quite an understanding about cities, being a mayor of Calabasas, so I'm pretty sure you'd be, and you're a planner. So just thinking about these spaces and just reimagining how they're used. I mean, for me, like parks, when you look at the history of parks and recreation, as Tunisia was talking about, the Industrial Revolution and the significance of them as real lungs in the city, but more importantly, there were spaces where people showered, where people went. So we're going back to that place. The thing is, why did parks become just a place where we recreate nature, where we just look at it leisurely? Why are they not functioning in a way that really services the community? So even reimagining the function of these zones that we've created in cities. And so I feel that because 50% of the population live in urban centers, I think that we need to start testing these things out, alternative systems that can be overlaid and replicated by others who have the means, who have the creativity, who have the passion in those communities. So I just wanted to say.
Amen.
So there's a lot of energy in this field. So yeah, we're on to something, obviously. And so I know Veronica brought up kind of a need for more of a cohesion in the vision, and Delaney, who's not here.
No, Delaney's there.
Yeah.
Delaney
brought up like, okay, well, there's a tension between earth care and people care, and where do we begin? And I'm just wondering, do you guys feel like, to some extent, your concerns have been addressed at this point? Or is there more that we need to, is there more for this meeting that we need to get to?
For me,
Go ahead, Veronica.
Okay, thanks. I was gonna say, I think like all the things I heard about, I'm just like imagining a list of bullet points of like, educating on food. Jennifer, I love what you said, like exposure, connection, community, like that in itself to me seems like a really great mission, and I feel really good about just the list of things I heard, because I don't think we're gonna have the how or the first step, yet, but we just start getting clear on like, great, it is about organic food. It is about I loved the idea of no class division. Like, thank you for that. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Otherwise, we're just doing things an old way again. Like having these bullet points and maybe reflecting on that, and maybe all of us can have that in one document. Just so that we can all look at it and add to it if we want, and maybe in the next meeting, like, be like, cool, do we agree that these are all points that we want to actually create in this vision? And then get to like, okay, now how do we start, or what are our roles? That makes sense to you guys?
Yeah,
Water
beautiful.
potable.
Yeah.
I'm with that. That's exactly what I was about to say, because I'm like, okay, how do I get back into busy? I just want to, like, okay, I'm hearing that I need to get with John about really fleshing out our community creator space. I'm thinking that I need to reconnect with two people that are already here that already know like most of what I'm trying to do. I'm listening to the woman in the top right with the blonde locks. Okay, homelessness, that's like on my radar. And actually, Jennifer, sorry. And homelessness and things like that, that's something that I'm really passionate about. Maybe getting with the lady to give her some of my viewpoints on how that whole Gaia thing and all the people, I mean, I went to Berkeley, so a lot of the people are in this huge like circular movement between Venice Beach, and a lot of Berkeley moved to LA before it got expensive.
Go Bears.
Go Bears, that's right. So a lot, to me, I'm already connecting stuff. So I'm like, all right, this is my information. If you guys want it, John has it. I'm ready to go. I want to, really convert my backyard into a mini Boudreaux's cafe without the food necessarily. Having functions with bands and having meeting space, but also creator space. And for me, a lot of it is going to be focused on women of color, because a lot of our knowledge is forgotten or just pushed to the side. And there's a lot in our culture, there's always a big mama's house. And so I found out in my adulthood, I'm the big mama's house. So how do I facilitate that in my community? Because people are already coming up to my garden, stopping and saying, I sit here at this little bench. I never see anybody sitting in my garden, but they tell me they sit there and they're like, I'm comfortable. I love looking, and my garden looks horrible now, but I love looking at what you built. Like, people come and say, people are taking pictures of your garden. So it's like, okay, there's energy there. People want, fresh, hey, when are you starting the farmer's market? I never even thought about, for me to start one. So how do I, connect with the people that are here to get those things over?
I'm worried about time now.
Yeah.
So
It's 3:25, 3:35. I'm 2:35.
So I think we should realize that this is going to take a long time. There are many more people who are not in this conversation who need to be in this conversation. But I think there's enough people in this conversation, and I think the two networks that have been discussed are probably up to 50 people now are kind of thinking about this. And so if we were to find a Toys R Us that is dead, and if we were to find something at the,
I already found one. You keep saying it. It's in Bell Garden.
okay, so we've already found it, but I sort of think what we're going to need to do is to start with one and put in an immediate kitchen and just feed the people who come to work there. And then that will grow as people say, oh, there's food. And they come, and then, well, you want to eat here? Then you have to help work. Then it starts to grow immediately that way. And then I think we'd better be prepared to make sure that 1 becomes 2 and 2 becomes 4 and 4 becomes 8, because they're going to have to be spread all over the city in order for this to work. And that's going to make the city and the county be very interested in the fact that you want to take on this horrible thing. You're going to clear up all the garbage. You're going to make everything clean and nice, and you're going to grow food and feed the people. Well, okay, then I don't think they're going to say no. I think they're going to say, good luck with that, and here, you might need a little money. And so that's good. let them help with funding to some extent, don't you think? And then we're started. So whatever we can accomplish then is determined by how creative and how effective and how efficient we can be. But I think what Delaney said earlier is absolutely correct. It's a crisis, and it's upon us. And of course, there's going to be new people who are suddenly new to the crisis, but they're the old people who have been in the crisis for a long time. So we can't forget them. And so we got to do both of these. Let's do them both. Let's just get started and get the organization, and then when organize together all these different institutions and all the people who are willing, and then that's what we do. Once we start that, then it's Big Mama's. I want to be at Big Mama's.
The thing is that Big Mama's is already there.
Yes.
Excluders.
Yeah,
it's already there.
But let's use Big Mama. But you have to realize that there's going to be a lot of people coming to Big Mama.
Big Mama has always fed everyone.
Yes.
Well, I'll give you an example. In Bayview Hunters Point, there was a woman who was feeding people out of the back of her car. That literally turned into almost a homeless shelter in Bayview Hunters Point. Her grandsons and her sons are running that institution, and they fight to keep it open. For some reason, I can't remember. It's called Mama something, Mama D's or something. But it's huge, and they, as a matter of fact, they can't be a shelter, and people have been sitting in those chairs sleeping for 12 years, and we've been fighting for 20 years to try to fix that, or they have been. I joined that fight about 5 years ago. So there are things like that where, again, if you just reach out to the people that are already doing it, Big Mama can tell you where to spend that money, or where to help reorganize or economize things. So I just really stress because it's just a lot of headache, and I've seen it so many times before. Work with who is already there.
Sure, great.
Work with who's there.
I think that we, I think we're getting somewhere.
20 minutes.
And we have 20 minutes. Delaney, do you want? Yeah, I just want to make sure you had a chance to. Yeah.
Actually, I wanted to tell Delaney something. I got an email. So we have a history of the garden training camps for teenage prisoners in the 90s, and that was it was like what you did. It was like what you were doing with the vets, but with teenage prisoners. And we had gardens, and we had training. We had the brown thumb, green thumb program. At any rate, that took place at Camp Holton, which is one of the 7, I believe, 6 or 8 camps here in Los Angeles. I just got an email that they have taken apart, dismantled Camp Gonzales, which is the one that's out near Malibu. And the reason is because they have less prisoners. They're shifting away from imprisoning people to putting them into work and training to have their own entrepreneurial skills. The Camp Gonzales, I'll find out the status of, but it inspired me to think, well, we could go to these camps that are being shut down, and they have all the infrastructures of land, kitchens, housing, and given our past history and all of the skills and wherewithal we have here, that could be a resource to be tapped.
Absolutely, that's brilliant.
So I'm also sensitive to this notion that we might have multiple purposes, but if the group is willing to sort of swim in that uncertainty for the moment and have more meetings and discussions, we may be able to pull together the what we need to make this thing float. It might be a linear thing. It might be simultaneous. It might be all parallel all at once. So I am not certain of this vision. I'm inspired. I have flickers of hope and possibility that come to mind. And as a gardener and someone who creates food and medicines with the soil and partnering with nature, I am super inspired by the idea that we would eventually get to a place where people are finding themselves healing through the land. And so, we can go around again. I guess we'll do it as
15
Robin is suggesting in the next 15 minutes, just to answer or to at least address one of the questions that Dennis had earlier, which is, how can the birdhouse participate? We have a structure, we have a nonprofit, we have history, we have the possibility of getting funding. I, again, say that I have to, we operate our steering committee, we call the meeting of the mind, as a cooperative mindset. It's really working with the collective intelligence. So I won't speak on behalf of the group until we run something by this group. But I do say that the birdhouse could serve as some kind of a structure for fulfillment. And until we decide what that is, we won't go any further trying to, that I then speak as an individual and Jessica and Robin speak as individuals. Thank you.
Delaney,
Can I ask for one thing, Mr. Facilitator?
yes, but Delaney's been waiting quite a while to speak. So I'd really like to hear what she has to say.
Good.
If you don't mind waiting.
No,
I'm
no.
gonna quickly throw out two things. One is that the veteran community that I'm still connected with may well have the kind of guys or gals who've been officers and stuff who would like to come in and like help be some leadership at some point, which is really good for things like kids who've been incarcerated or foster youth, because they're the real deal, these vets. But the other thing I wanted to point out is one of my films, a tiny little 7-minute one that we did because I used to chair the Food and Ag Committee here for the Ojai Valley for many years. And one of our projects under that was the Grow Food Party Crew, because it's my belief that nobody wants to do anything anymore if it's not fun. And so it's like how you put a garden in, you get your friends and you do this whole thing. So I've got a 7-minute film that anybody can use with 10 steps of how you party crew. And in 2 hours, you have a garden. So it's a tool that can be used, like Tunisia, what she's got going, she can, help create satellites out of that for people who want their own garden, but are overwhelmed with doing it alone. So it turns it into a party thing like a barn racer. So I offer that as a resource. That's it for me.
Thank you, Amy. We have 15 minutes left. And really, I know that Dennis has something he needs to share. And I just want to say that what is really critical, in my opinion, is that we get really clear on what our next steps are and who is taking responsibility to fulfill which of these. And so I wanted to start shifting in that direction soon. And Dennis, I just want to give you a chance to say what you needed to say.
No, I didn't want to say anything. I wanted to hear from you now that you've been our facilitator and the audience for all of us and our ideas. Yeah. And it would be important to hear the synthesis that you've made out of our day's commitment here.
Yeah, sure, I can do my best. I mean, ultimately, what I'm hearing is there's really something new emerging. We see that that the structures that we've been living with aren't actually living up to their capacity to actually solve the problems that we're facing right now. And we see an opportunity to be somewhat of a bridge between what is and what is coming. It seems like there's a lot of different connections and avenues and strategies, but as I see it, it really boils down to needing a location, needing finance, and inviting participants. And then there's details that we can sort out from that. But it seems like those are the kind of the elements, and there's a lot of themes and nuances and directions we can go with it. And my sense is that those will define themselves depending on what are the kind of low-hanging fruit resources that we have access to. And then we can kind of build upon it as we go. Yeah, that's kind of what I'm hearing from the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a little battery power in the camera yet? I want to show this. I use this little symbol all the time.
Unity.
Community, whether it's communications, But unity is the critical part of all this.
Yeah.
And we've lost the sense of community in a lot of ways from the size of the city of LA or county of LA. And there's 88 cities in the county of Los Angeles, as an example. And there have been instances of unity, but it's almost always at the almost global level when you think about how big LA is. I mean, we're 11 million people in LA County, and the annual operating budget for the county of Los Angeles is $34 billion. The budget dust from that operation would easily occupy us and accomplish everything that everybody around this table wants in 6 months. If we just had someone who's willing to say, well, we have a community. I got elected because, I've been telling you I'm going to preserve the community and help the community and teach the community and all the other stuff. And I heard Herb Wesson's name mentioned recently. Herb Wesson didn't get elected to the Board of Supervisors. We have 5 supervisors on the Board of LA County Supervisors that are women. That's never been in the history of Los Angeles, which has been around since 1784, the city. And the county of LA, in the same period of time, has turned into this megalopolis, which is ungovernable. But
Jessica, Tunisia, and Aaron would be great to go to the council member.
No question. But
no men.
But does any of the 3 of you know Sheila Kuehl or Catherine Barger or Hilda Solis or Janice Hahn?
Dennis will be he'll represent his feminine side.
My what side?
Your feminine side.
Oh.
It's yin yang.
Yeah.
You'll go.
There you go.
And
that's in your book.
Can you get, Dennis, are you capable of getting people a seat at the table at the city council or the LA City Council?
Well, the answer is yes. Anyone around this table can get that. The problem is always time.
Okay.
And the time issue we haven't dealt with yet.
Great.
And I would say that in our next meeting,
yes.
If we can actually take what we've talked about today and get Hugo to plug it into the
7 vortex.
Well, either 7 vortex or the regenerate virtual Gaia system, and I think that would be relatively easy to do because he does it every time we had a meeting. The meeting we were in.
Yeah, see if he could do it. Yeah.
Well, he did it. I mean, while we were on the meeting of 45 minutes, he actually populated this incredible diagram in 3 dimensions and in all the gravitas of each of the components that were there. And then you realize the complexity, but once it's there, it's kind of like looking at pointillism picture. You can see what the art looks like.
In terms of next steps, inviting Hugo to the next meeting, are you able to be the point person for that action?
Oh yeah, well, all 3 of us. I mean,
that's
Johnny and John and Dennis have been doing this now for a week.
Great.
And that's the catalyst for this meeting.
Like 100 years. What are other important next steps? Like just kind of immediate next steps that need to take place.
I would say that the ecosystem restoration camps movement needs to be apprised of what's going on here. And there is a new 501c3, which is set up by the ecosystem restoration camps movement in the United States. I think it has now done a little bit because we started something up there in the fire zone. So I think they raised about $20,000 or something, and might have been matched by others. And I don't know what, but anyway, that should be usable. But that means bringing in the council and getting the council involved in this idea and not making it slow everything down.
It seems premature to invite them in.
It seems premature because, so I think we can go through the birdhouse, and the birdhouse is already connected to the ecosystem restoration camp, so it's not really a problem.
What other next steps do people think need to happen? What are some kind of pressing actions that we take to move this forward?
I think clarifying our vision. Really kind of putting, I think, the points, just so that we're clear on what is bringing all of us together. And I think how can we find alignment in our own personal projects and this project, because I think this will be important to figure out how to streamline it.
It might be nice if there's someone who'd be willing to kind of condense what has happened today into some kind of presentation at the next meeting. Does that seem premature, or just I guess I'm asking, what is a process that we can use to clarify our vision? What is an action we can take to do that?
Well, Veronica had offered to create bullet points of what we have talked about today.
Great.
And I would hesitate to jump too quickly on a precision vision, but what the heck, take it on,
Well, you recorded this, didn't you, Johnny?
Yes, we can look at this.
My suggestion is that take a look at that. I think you can send it raw to Hugo and to Archie and let them see what we've talked about, what we've done, if they have the time. If they don't, they can just skip through the whole thing and pick the salient points. And then let's start with that virtual Gaia diagram and then see what pops out, because there will be, it's kind of like if you've seen the software program that is actually content analysis, where, a conversation of 2 hours like this, how many times did the word urban planning come up? Well, then urban planning gets a big square of type. And then down here you have women's rights, and that didn't even get talked about except by Tunisia, and not even in that sense. So that will probably be in this meeting a small thing, but this is an institutional structure, and we're not talking about verbal. We're talking about, really graphical presentation. And when you see it, it's like, when you step back from a painting by Seurat.
Okay.
If you know about, are you familiar with George Seurat and his artwork? He's a pointillist.
Yes.
And we have 500 points that we talked about today. And there is a picture that comes from that point.
I see you. And so I just wanted to, before we go.
I'm done with that. I just wanted to make that point.
John made the request to Victoria about doing some kind of, or I'm sorry, Veronica, to do some kind of point, kind of a rendering thing. And
love that. Yeah, I think somebody was taking notes, right? So it'd be great to have those two. I was also just writing my own notes, but I think, I want to hear your guys' take. If, I just put together a list of bullet points that I think it's like, these are things that we want to be a part of whatever it is we're offering. And we can read through that maybe at the top of the next meeting, and then see if we want to add anything. And I think it's fine if it's long or if it's whatever, because ultimately we're going to have to start somewhere and start smaller. I think that the goal would be to have this like long list of like, cool, these are all the things we want, so we can always look back to that. And then I imagine that the next meeting, like if we're like time is of the essence and we really want to get a Toys R Us or a dilapidated building or whatever it is, we spend the next meeting being like, okay, cool, like what does that first little business model look like? What are the actual tangible things we would need for that one little building space? Because we can talk about like feeding people, sure. But I think there's we want to have the organic food. We want to have education attached to it. And so we can look back at what our bullet points are as we're imagining a picture of what that first little business model looks like.
Fabulous. Are you okay with connecting your notes?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
Great.
I was going to tell her, I'll send you my notes.
I'm
Awesome.
also wondering, in terms of designing a business model conversation for the next meeting, is there any kind of preparation that's needed in advance for that to happen? Or do you think that we can just incorporate that into the next meeting?
I think that using each other as backboards right now, I think we can all know that, like, okay, cool, let's go and assimilate this and be prepared to think about what that first little business model looks like, so that we all come back with ideas ready. And then I think we just continue the brainstorm there. That's what I would suggest.
I just want to, now I just want to go back to what your point was when you were sitting over there, which was that you were wanting to connect.
Well, I think that all of us should actually take a look at 7 Vortex and Virtual Gaia, so you can see what the model looks like. I woke up this morning like John did with a dream. And I asked, what's the point? And I thought, well, the point is humanity and meaningful survival and effectiveness and efficiency. And if that's the outcome of everything we've talked about today, even in a small way, which is already done as far as I'm concerned, just a bunch of us sitting together around here, and I can't wait until I have a chance to eat whatever you prepared. So that's kind of neat. But I want to make you aware of this artist, and I'm sure you already are, but take a look at that. That's George Seurat, and he's a pointillist and from the Impressionist era, and he does humans, and he does, seascapes, and he did this very famous painting, which I'm sure you all saw if you watched the movie Ferris Bueller's Day Off. And Ferris Bueller's Day Off, if you remember, they're in the Metropolitan Museum, and they are right up to the nose with this, and then they back off and they realize that's just a bunch of dots. But then you start to see some form and some feeling and some value, and a little farther away and a little farther away, and eventually you see, hey, this guy, he put hundreds of thousands of dots together to create a scene or a landscape or a structure using oils and brushes and fingers and everything else we need to do to make artwork. So whatever our particular skills or our contributions are, there is a piece of art at the end of the deal. 100 years later, it has incredible value. You can't buy those paintings.
Thank you.
That's the whole point.
So maybe there's just a piece about honoring our interconnectedness and how these individual forms actually create something that is beyond even what we can comprehend in intelligence and beingness.
I love it.
So I'm just wondering, I mean, I think the other important next step is just when our next meeting is. Unless there's something that anyone else wants to add, I know we're getting towards the end.
It probably needs to be Zoom, and it probably needs to be before he goes off to the Redwoods in order to deal with his next fellowship.
Well, I have Zoom capability.
That's what I'm saying, is that we don't need to meet in person like this. Having made the friendships in person, in order to facilitate the speed with which we need to do this. I would encourage you all, when you go home tonight, go to Virtual Gaia or Regenerate or to 7 Vortex.
Should we focus on the next meeting time?
Well, but I was going to say that first, and then given what the 7 of us here have in the way of other constraints, when will we all have that same level of appreciation for what the structure might be?
Can we keep the pace of Sundays? I don't know. Is a week too?
That works for me.
Good, next week.
I mean, it is a sacred meeting.
Same time next week, noon
Sunday. I'd offer that up.
And let's try to move the situation forward. If we could identify places where we could immediately work, or if we could, if Big Mama wants to start, we could focus everything on Big Mama.
I'm already. The way that I'm looking at this is like, I'm going to continue doing my thing regardless of what's happening here, because
same here.
No
Everybody's
what,
doing
like,
that.
Everybody's got to do their own thing. What I was going to say is, I'd like to put out my contact information for anybody that'd like to link up with me. And maybe we should have a contact list, period.
Okay, well, what I can do is make sure that everybody is connected by email. And
I would call it Friends of Birdhouse.
Friends of the Birdhouse.
Why not? That's the friends list to start.
So yes.
And Johnny's got all over.
Yeah, I'll just make sure that everybody's connected in that way.
Does next Sunday at noon not work for anybody? Okay. One other thing is, I was wondering, Veronica, if you would be open to facilitating the next meeting, since if you brought up the idea of kind of like a business plan and stuff like that. Maybe I know you already have a lot on your plate now, so feel free to say no, but I just wanted to offer that opportunity if you're interested.
Cool. Sure. I'll try the next one. And
Yay.
Veronica, if you could give me that bullet points before next week, I'd really like to run it by the group that I've been working with because they have a lot of resources and connections, and they're really interested in this topic and really want to do something. So maybe I can get one of them to come and jump on next week or something, but
Awesome. Yeah, I think it's great while it's fresh. So I think what we're coming to for action items is like a group email that John from the Birdhouse or other John will send to all of us after this. Then I can share a Google Doc with the group either tonight or tomorrow. That's the first, version of these bullets. That'll give everybody a chance to look at them. And then you can even add stuff before the next meeting if you want or whatever. And then we can start off the next meeting with that. And I agree with, I don't know who it was. I think Lou, it was you who just said that. I think that it might be helpful, and maybe this is what you guys had discussed separately, but if we did assign some people to start looking for locations that we could potentially use so that next week we have at least an idea of what we could use.
Well, that's the other reason why I'd love to talk with the group I've been working with, because they've actually been looking at old malls or closed down Toys R Us or whatever, do some kind of urban farming or, something like that. And we do have a guy in the group who works with farms all over Southern California to connect farmers who have extra produce and try to get them to places. And a lot of them are in tech companies, so they're developing an app to make connections. So I think it's a great partnership, like with you guys. And
well,
also
I share that with us in the email, so we'll have access before the next meeting.
Yeah, so that's what I was saying. I want to share this with the group a bit and get some of those guys maybe on the next call.
So that's awesome. And then I think, Jennifer, that makes you like, and if anybody else wants to volunteer of like, in like adjacent to that, also looking for spaces too. If that makes sense. If we think like, Jennifer, if you're like, oh, they have a pocket full of ideas and spaces.
I don't know if they have the, like anything, these are just all things we've been kicking around for the last couple months, trying to solidify like what they want to do. So anyway.
Does anyone else feel up to that?
I can call a Toys R Us or a.
It died, right?
I've never done anything like this, so I have no idea where that first step even is.
Well, to argue that it has never been done before is to argue disbelief in the dignity of man.
I don't want to argue that.
Okay, well then, it sounds like maybe there's just like a general request to bring forth place into it, and it's a kind of a distributed effort as well as a manifestation.
If I were to add anything, I think we should, if we identify a place where they let us to cook, let us cook. There can be a central kitchen and a creator space. We should go there and start cooking, because then that will bring people to eat. If they're eating, they're working. If they're working, it's being growing. We can then end that conversation as we move forward. So we'll start to be overwhelmed by the number of people who are hungry, but okay, then we have to get more people.
You may not have to actually do that because PBS SoCal has been running for the past 3 months. A church with a musical rapper, entertainer, minister who's been running a kitchen downtown LA in Skid Row. And all we need to do is actually watch KCET or, SoCal, or what is it, PBS SoCal.
Is that on every day?
They run the darn thing every time there's a short form or a short break, from one program to the next. So you probably can.
We need to get his name and phone number.
I'll look it up tonight. I probably have it on the tip of my tongue. I just can't think of it. But
I was going to say, are you both in town this next week?
Yes.
What?
Just maybe by Zoom. So I have some very, very wonderful friends of mine that are now in decision-making positions. One of them is got into the council, and his brother is the director of Parks and Recreation.
Who is it?
It's in the city of Linwood, but I just feel like having people in the inside makes it really easy to work with the city. So I wonder if maybe setting up a meeting and just kind of putting this on their lap as individuals. Yeah, maybe one of you two. Okay.
You two. Well, what I'm talking about is, and not to to argue, just that this is a videoed soup kitchen, basically, or a creator space where they cook, they worship, they help people get connected to resources to deal with everything from shelter to childcare to everything else. And it's in the nature of fun because there's music and it's non-denominational. They don't really work you over from a religious standpoint. I mean, it's already on KCET, so PBS SoCal. Take a look, and if anybody is already subscribed to that, just look up.
They might be streaming it.
Okay, well, I want to be respectful
Oh,
of
they'd be happy to
everybody's
help.
time, and so I think it's time we close. So, do you have an idea of a song?
Yeah,
Is there because there's idea of end with a song.
I
So-
thought about the song, and it's "This land is your land, this land is my land."
John, I
Yeah.
know, are you okay with that? You brought
From California to the New York Island, but it's really planetary.
Land is my land, this land is your land.
From California to the New York Island, from the redwood forest to the Gulf Stream wide. This land was made for you and me, and that's enough.
They left already.
That was nice.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. This is just really awesome. And, praises to John D.Liu for catalyzing it all. And praises to you all for bringing your energy and expertise and really inspiring. I'm pleased to be involved in whatever way in the future.
Till then.
Bye, guys. So nice meeting you all.
Nice to meet everybody.
In contact.
Yes.
Thank you all for being who you are.
Thank
And
you.
whoever wants some grapefruit.
Oh, yeah.
All right, sounds great.
Dump these out.
I want some.
You know what? Get in contact with me. I do construction side work, and I have a friend that has 3 full trees, and you guys come and pick them when you want to. This is
Oh my
like
God.
a half of what I have.
I wish I could show you my tree in my backyard. It's amazing and it never stops fruiting. Grapefruit.
Oh.
Let me come. I want to get a collective of people together to pick and can and dehydrate and stuff.
Yeah.
It's great for the trees to regenerate for the next,
Yeah.
season. I was doing it with another group. Corona kind of stopped it and they kind of fell apart. But I'd like to connect different areas of LA because citrus grows all over LA.
Yeah.
Could you save some seeds? It's always interesting to get
Yeah.
seeds
Yeah.
from a tree that fruits all year round.
Yeah. This tree, I bought my house 22 years ago. It's been here since before I was here, and it's like incredible.
Oh, I can't wait to see it.
Yeah, I know. I wish I could. I don't know if maybe I can show you.
Old friends, new friends.
There it is.
Too.
Beautiful. Okay. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Enjoy the grapefruit. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay.
Right?